I think. Yeah. Okay, we're live on both platforms. We're live on Facebook at the 19 Report, and we will be live on YouTube at the 19 Report. I want to talk today about a subject that's been talked about many times on the advisory show. I don't know the gentleman's name, but on the advisory show, and a lot of the Hebrews, Israelites, are talking about this subject. But I don't think it's a subject that we're mostly aware of, especially in South Carolina. And I don't know how important of a subject it would be for us in South Carolina, but I wanted to talk about it because Allah is tugging on my heart to do so. So this is the subject for today. We're talking about the Devil's Punch Bowl in Natchez, Mississippi, something that many of us don't know about. Now, I'm reading on the screen down below because I'm recording, and it reads, never forget the Devil's Punch Bowl. 20,000 freed slaves died after being forced into post-slavery concentration camps. I want to read this verbatim because I think it's just that important, some parts of it. It says, history has always made concentration camps to be synonymous with atrocities of Nazi Germany. But America has its own dirty secrets about the use of concentration camps. These camps were located in Natchez, Mississippi, and were used to corral freed slaves during and after the American Civil Wars. As slaves were being emancipated from the plantations, their route to freedom usually took them into the vicinity of the Union Army forces. Now, many of us are fighting this constant campaign of taking down the rebel flag. The rebel army, the Reds, were fighting against the Blues, which was the Union Army. The Union Army, many of the volunteers in the Union Army were black soldiers. If you have ever seen that movie Glory with Denzel Washington, if you haven't, look it up. These are black people volunteer to fight against the Reds on the side of the Blue in hopes of sealing a letter of freedom for them and their family. Well, the Reds are the rebels that we are so constantly fighting against the rebel flag or the Confederate flag. The Blues, the Union Army, who used the red, white, and blue, the stars and stripes, as their symbol of freedom, these are the ones who are held accountable for what happened in the Devil's Punch Bowl in Natchez, Mississippi. Now, as slaves were being emancipated from the plantation, their route to freedom usually took them into the vicinity of the Union Army forces. Unhappy with the slaves being freed, now the Union Army was unhappy with the slaves being freed. The Army began recapturing the slaves and forcing the men back into labor camps. The most notorious of the several concentration camps were located in Natchez, Mississippi. This is what is called the Devil's Punch Bowl. Now, I want to go into a little detail about what the Devil's Punch Bowl is, where it is, and what it signifies. As the slaves made their way to freedom, the towns of Natchez went from populations of 10,000 freed slaves to 120,000 people almost overnight. In order to deal with the population influx of recently freed slaves, a concentration camp was established to essentially eradicate the slaves. Now, eradicate means to get rid of, decimate, destroy, to kill, to murder, to allow to die. The men were recaptured by the Union troops, the Blues, and forced back into hard labor. The women and children were locked behind concentration walls of camps and left to die from starvation. Many also died from the smallpox disease. In total, over 20,000 freed slaves were killed in 1 year inside of this American concentration camp in Natchez, Mississippi. Now, our research studies the existence of the concentration camp says the Union Army did not allow them to remove the bodies from the camp. So in this deep embankment, this deep tombstone, this deep tomb of 20,000 dead bodies, the Union Army, the Blues, not the rebels, but the Union Army, the one that blacks agreed to volunteer to fight on, thinking that they were fighting for their freedom, the Blues, did not allow anyone to go down into this Devil's Punch Bowl, and there were 3 Devil Punch Bowls in Natchez, Mississippi. They did not allow anyone to go down into the Devil's Punch Bowl to free the slaves. Instead, they said, give them shovels, and said, bury them where they drop. The camp was called the Devil's Punch Bowl because of the way the area is shaped. The camp was located at the bottom of a cavernous pit with trees located on the bluffs above. Now, this camp is still present. This camp is still present in Natchez, Mississippi right now to this day. Now, today the bluffs are known for the wild peach groves, but the locals will not eat any of the fruit because some are aware of what has fertilized the trees, the dead bodies of 20,000 slaves. One researcher has noted that skeletal remains still wash up when the area becomes flooded by the Mississippi River. Even when Americans try to bury its racist ways, we must force America to acknowledge what has occurred and not shy away from the truth. Let's never forget all the freed slaves that died in American concentration camps at the Devil's Punch Bowl. Now, as we celebrate these holiday seasons and make foolish statements about foolish things, we tend to forget about what has occurred in our life. We forget it so much, in fact, that God is forgetting us. I'm going to say that again. God is forgetting our struggle, forgetting our attempts to, forgetting our prayers. No need to answer the prayers of one who does not desire to know the truth about themselves and how they got in the condition that they're in. We're talking about the Devil's Punch Bowl, we're talking about the Union Army, and we're talking about remembering so that we can hold people accountable for what has been done to us. Now, I want to play this short clip, 3 minutes long, and it's always Caucasian researchers who take the time to learn about our history. I don't know how loud it'll be in here, but I'm hoping it'll be loud enough that you can hear.
This is WJTV News Channel 12 at 6.
Concentration camps. People mostly associate the term with Nazi Germany, but historians say it's true. They also existed in America. During the Civil War, authorities in Natchez, Mississippi forced tens of thousands of freed slaves into camps built in what's known as the Devil's Punch Bowl. Jacob Kittelstadt explores this forgotten history this Mystery Monday.
Untouched fruit falls to the ground near the banks of the Mississippi River.
They talk about there's the most beautiful wild peach groves down in the Punch Bowl.
And researcher Paula Westbrook says, like a peach, the area known as the Devil's Punch Bowl has a pit, a mass grave from the 1860s. Historians estimate that in 1 year, up to 20,000 freed slaves died in contraband camps below these bluffs.
When the slaves were released from the plantations during the occupation, they overran Natchez, and the population went from about 10,000 to 120,000 overnight.
So they decided to build an encampment for them at Devil's Punch Bowl, which they walled off and wouldn't let them out.
Don Estes is the former director of the Natchez City Cemetery.
I just put my own tombstone right there. You see Estes?
Learning history's been his life. He says Union troops ordered recaptured black men to perform hard labor.
Straight down right here.
While women and children were all but left to die in the 3 Punch Bowl prisons.
Disease broke out among them, smallpox being the main one, and thousands died. They were begging to get out. Turn me loose and I'll go home back to the plantation, anywhere but there. But they wouldn't let them out.
The Union Army did not allow them to remove the bodies from the camp. They just gave them shovels and said, bury them where they drop.
And I'd really like to show you more of this terrain, but it's just too thick with greenery. These bluffs are also straight down, so not only is it dangerous to navigate, it's still very mysterious back there.
It's a bed of alligators and snakes. It would take Indiana Jones to get back in there at this point.
Then you come on up washing away bluffs, and at the Devil's Punch Bowl that has so many people that no one knows how they got killed or when, and they're still down there wasted.
And even to this day, they talk about wild peach trees that come up down there but no one in Natchez will eat them because they know what the fertilizer was.
Exploring the unexplained on Mystery Monday, Jacob Kittelstead, WJTV News Channel 12.
And historians say even now people might discover old skeletal remains after flooding on the Mississippi. But being on the Natchez Trace, sometimes it's difficult to tell which century those bones are from.
In Natchez, Mississippi. And I wanted to share that information with us today, especially as we come into a new year. Again, the Union Army. I want to show you this picture of the Union Army, and I want you to see the different flags of the Union Army and the Rebel Army. Once I get the hang of this once I get the hang of this, where this camera is, here it is. As you can see right here, there are the rebels, and then there's the Union Army. The Union Army in the blue has the red, white, and blue as their shield of defense. The Rebel Army has the rebel flag as their shield of defense. The Union Army in the blue are the ones that enslaved us in the Devil's Punch Bowl, and 20,000 black people within a year died of smallpox and disease as they couldn't climb up the walls of the Devil's Punch Bowl. The women and children were separated from the men, and they all died in the Devil's Punch Bowl. This is the history that we should be concerned about, because a man who does not know his history is doomed to repeat it. And you and I may not repeat it, being in the hells of a mud-infested, alligator-infested, snake-infested punch bowl. But we are repeating that history in our ignorance, rather we're rich or rather we're poor, in the fact that we are disconnected. Because as I speak of this, most of you will get angry with me for talking about it, as opposed to feeling any type of empathy for the people who suffered through it, so that you can enjoy these things that we enjoy today for this day called Christ Mass, that we have made an abomination out of, another pagan holiday. In the South, most slaves did not hear of the proclamation for months of freedom, but the purpose of the Civil War had now changed. The North was not only fighting to preserve the Union, it was fighting to end slavery throughout this time. Northern black men had continued to pressure the Army to enlist with them. So there was an enlistment of our people into the Union Army. And if you look at the movie Glory with Denzel Washington, you will see what we went through, thinking that we were fighting for our freedom. In the meantime, there were 3 concentration camps in 3 different areas in Natchez, Mississippi, called the Devil's Punch Bowl. And until this day, there are fruits, peaches, beautiful peaches that grow there, but no one will eat them because they know the fertilizer is the bodies of black men, women, and children. This is Brother Johnny of the 19 Report. I wanted to touch bases. Again, it's 2 o'clock where you are a.m., and it's 10 o'clock a.m. where I am. And it's very difficult to broadcast, but I wanted to get that out to you today because God, Allah, has been pulling on my heart to do so, and I have done it. And I pray that I've done it in the best way. Thank you again for tuning in. This is Jamil Salib Zamir, Brother Johnny of the 19 Report, Manning, South Carolina.